Absolutely, and it showed how PIL could be used to protect entire communities.
Even future generations.
Exactly. It was about safeguarding the well-being of everyone.
That's really inspiring.
It is. It shows how PIL can create lasting change.
Do you have any other examples that show how PIL can address problems that affect a huge number of people?
Definitely. In the early 2000s, there was a PIL filed about starvation deaths in India.
Starvation deaths.
Yes, it's a very serious issue.
Absolutely.
The person who filed the PIL argued that having access to food is a basic human right,
It is.
and the court agreed.
Wow.
They saw how critical the situation was.
So what did they do?
They issued a whole series of directives to the government.
Okay, like what?
One of the big ones was to set up the public distribution system, or PDS.
The PDS, right? I've heard of that.
It's a system that makes sure that food grains reach the people who need them most.
The poorest and most vulnerable.
Exactly.
So because of this PIL, a system was put in place to address a fundamental need.
That's right, the right to food.
It's amazing how PIL can be used to tackle problems of this scale.
It really shows the power of PIL to act as a catalyst for social change.
Pushing for accountability, transparency, and the realization of basic human rights. These examples are incredible.
They are.
They show how PIL has really shaped India's legal landscape.
It has, and it's helped address some of the country's most pressing problems.
But I also know that PIL has been criticized.
It has.
It's not without its downsides. Right?
That's true. While PIL has done a lot of good, it's important to acknowledge the concerns that people have raised.
Okay, so let's talk about those.
Let's do that.
What are some of the main criticisms of PIL?
Well, one of the biggest worries is that PIL can be misused by people with their own interests in mind.
Okay, so not actually for the public good.
Exactly. There have been cases where PIL has been used to delay projects,
Oh, I see.
to harass opponents,
Wow.
or even to push personal agendas under the cover of public interest.
So it's like any powerful tool.
It is.
It can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly.
It all depends on who's using it.
That's right. And another concern is that sometimes PIL can lead to judicial overreach.
Oh, right. The court going too far.
Yes, getting involved in areas that should be left to the legislature or the executive branch.
I see. So there's that fine line again
There is.
between judicial activism and stepping over the boundaries.
Precisely.
So how has the judiciary responded to these criticisms?
Well, the Supreme Court has been pretty proactive in addressing these challenges.
Okay.
Remember those guidelines we talked about?
About checking who's filing the PIL and the content of the petitions.
Exactly. Those are part of the court's efforts to prevent PIL from being misused.
So it's like a constant process of making things better.
It is.
Trying to find that sweet spot
Yes.
where you encourage genuine PILs,
Right?
the ones that really serve the public interest,
Precisely.
but also guarding against those that have ulterior motives.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
It sounds like it.
The court is always trying to refine its approach to PIL.
Right, because they recognize its potential for good,
I do.
but they also know that it needs safeguards
Absolutely.
to prevent it from being used for the wrong reasons.
Yes, exactly.
This conversation has been so informative. I feel like I'm really starting to understand how complex PIL is.
It is a complex area.
And I think the key takeaway for me
Yes.
is that PIL is an incredibly powerful tool for social justice.
It is.
But it's a tool that has to be used carefully,
Absolutely.
responsibly,
Yes.
and with a real commitment to fairness.
And due process.
Exactly.
Crucial.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I think it would be helpful to talk about the specific types of cases that are not allowed to be filed as PIL.
You're right. There are certain boundaries.
Boundaries that the court has set.
Exactly.
So let's delve into those categories
To it.
and understand why the court has drawn those lines.
Okay.
So we'll take a closer look at those boundaries, and then in the final part of our deep dive, we'll wrap up with some thoughts on the impact of PIL and its future in India. Welcome back, everyone. We've been exploring public interest litigation in India, and it's been quite a journey. We've seen how PIL has given people a voice, how it's led to some really important court decisions.
Landmark judgments.
Right, and how it's brought about real change in society.
Real change.
But as we've talked about, there's also a potential for misuse,
There is.
which is why the Supreme Court has been so careful about setting boundaries for PIL.
Absolutely. They've defined what it can and cannot be used for.
Exactly. And you mentioned that there are certain types of cases that are specifically excluded.
Right.
They just don't qualify as PIL.
I don't.
So can you give us some examples?
Sure. One common category that's excluded is landlord-tenant disputes.
Okay, so disagreements between landlords and tenants.
Exactly.
That's usually seen as a private matter.
It is, between two parties.
Right, and not something that needs PIL.
Not really a public interest issue.
So if you're having a problem with your landlord,
Yes.
PIL is not the way to go.
You'd have to use the regular legal channels.
Back to the traditional courts.
Exactly.
And what about disputes between employees and employers?
Those are typically handled through labor laws and specific tribunals.
So service matters are also out.
They are?
It seems like the court is trying to keep PIL focused on issues that affect a wider group of people.
They are.
The public interest, as the name suggests.
Precisely. Issues that have broader implications.
Not just personal or private disagreements.
Exactly.
What other types of cases are excluded?
Well, another area is admissions to educational institutions.
College admissions.
Yes, things like that.
So you can't use PIL to try and get into a specific school.
No, those are generally seen as individual cases.
Right. Each person's situation is different.
And they should be dealt with through the normal admission processes.
So again, the court is making sure that PIL isn't used to bypass existing systems.
That's right.
It's about using PIL for its intended purpose.
Exactly, for genuine public interest concerns.
It's been an amazing journey exploring PIL with you.
I've enjoyed it.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
From the history of PIL,
Its origins,
right, to how it works in India,
the principles, the guidelines,
the impact it's had,
the criticisms,
everything.
the spectrum.
For those of you prepping for the UPSC exam,
Yes.
I think this deep dive has given you a really solid understanding of PIL.
A comprehensive overview?
And even if you're not facing an exam,
Right.
just knowing about PIL is important for being an informed citizen.
It is. It helps you understand how the legal system can be used to address injustice.
And work towards a fairer society.
Exactly.
It's been really eye-opening to see how PIL has given ordinary people the power to create change.
Empowered them.
Exactly, to hold the powerful accountable and to fight for those who don't have a voice.
It's a remarkable tool.
It is, but as we've learned, it needs to be used carefully and responsibly.
Absolutely.
So, as we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
We've seen how PIL has evolved in India
We have?
and how it's been shaped by things like social media and citizen activism.
Right. It's an evolving landscape.
So what do you think the future holds for PIL? How will it continue to change in the years to come?
That's a great question, and I think the answer lies with all of us.
With all of us.
As citizens, as lawyers, as members of a society that values justice and equality.
We all have a role to play.
We do.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into public interest litigation in India.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for a better world.